Good evening to all. On behalf of Indus International Research Foundation, I welcome you to the fourth session of lecture series on important battles of Indian subcontinent. Today, we have a renowned Indian historian and Tamil heritage expert, Shri Sivasankar Babu, who will be speaking on medieval Chola military forces, infrastructure, and expeditions. The session is being chaired by Dr. S. Vasanti, retired Deputy Superintending Archaeologist. Dear friends, in this webinar series, we are requesting eminent scholars from the continent and abroad to speak on various aspects of important battles on Indian subcontinent. So till now, we had 3 sessions and 1 inaugural session on 15 January. So this webinar series will continue for years to come, and meanwhile we will also arrange physical conferences every year. In this webinar series, we are requesting scholars to speak on the topic of their choice on the subject every second Saturday and fourth Saturday. So now moving ahead, I will request Group Captain Rajshekhar Mehta sir, General Secretary of IIRF, and also another convener of this webinar series to introduce IIRF.
Thank you, Dr. Piyush. On behalf of Indus International Research Foundation, which is the platform on which this webinar series has been organized, I welcome you all. Since it is a very interesting topic awaiting to be presented, I will not take very long to talk about our organization and keep it very short to make you familiar with what we are. Ladies and gentlemen, Indus International Research Foundation is a Delhi-based think tank with its centers at Bangalore and USA. This foundation is part of a global network of scholars, professionals, veterans, based both in India and abroad. The foundation focuses primarily on international relations, India heritage, its history, political economy, and security studies. And it is led by a group of experts with decades of international, academic, and domestic policy experiences. IIRF India engages with government, it engages with policymakers, it engages with academics, students, industries, civil society to provide insightful, I would say, fresh analysis of global trends. IIRF, through its various activities, also aligns itself with India's challenging role as an emerging world leader. Foundation also runs a special program for veterans. IIRF has on its panel an array of very high-profile personalities from the civil services, defense, academia, as patrons and advisors who guide the research effort of the organization. Research and publication being its main activity, IIRF maintains high editorial standards of material published at its site. As you know, we invite articles which we publish on our website, and every year we also issue a IIRF yearbook, which has got a very niche circulation. We sponsor research projects, organize interviews, panel discussions, debates, seminars, publication of books, journals, and reports. These constitute our core activities. Now, uniqueness of IIRF lies in the fact that it seeks solution to national and international problems through the prism of Indian ethos, philosophy, and civilizational wisdom. As you know, if mankind is to survive as a civil society, there is no alternative other than to share the resources of the universe for the benefit of all. So therefore, Foundation also endeavors to prepare India in facing the challenges of 21st century as an economic and knowledge power to contribute its bits in the common good of humanity. We believe in Indian wisdom that is contained in Vedas that says nature is the sole owner of all the treasures in the universe and there is enough for everyone. Ishopnisad. With this, I will hand over back to uh, Dr. Piyush to start this session. And thank you very much. You can visit our website at indusresearch.in. We do invite uh, articles which you can submit. There is a submission section in there. You can see there and you can submit your articles. We will like to publish it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Before I invite Shri Sivasankar Babu, sir, I take the privilege to go through his brief bio note. After 15 years of glorious service in Indian Overseas Bank, he worked in ITES companies like Wipro, Capgemini, Hexaware, and continued consultancy through his own company, Technobanker, and mentors sessions for campus placement. Besides banking, his passion is history and heritage. He has his own domain, Babu for Heritage, for sharing his scholarly works in Indian history, art, and culture. This is also his YouTube video channel. He is well versed in all scripts like Tamil Brahmi, Vatalettu, Grantham. He is part of Tamil Heritage Trust, which focuses on spreading heritage awareness. He is involved in THT site seminars, in training sessions, in heritage temple art and architecture in many universities of India. His YouTube channel, Babu for Heritage, is specific for heritage videos. He is one of the recently formed Select 100 Incredible India Tourism Guide, Advanced Heritage from Ministry of India, Government of India. We welcome you, sir, and I request you to start your presentation. Thank you, sir.
Good evening, all, on a very pleasant evening. Before I start the presentation, I'd like to thank the IIRF team, which is a prestigious organization and which is visualizing a path-breaking series of seminars on highlighting the key wars that happened in India. But again, if you see the history so far, we talk about the Guptas and straight away jump into Mughalais, and most of the thing in between is not clearly documented and not well spread. So this initiative will highlight lot of regional kings and a lot of valor that has happened in multiple corners of India. If you know the longest surviving dynasties, you are in for a surprise. It is not your traditional things. Ahom dynasty is one of the longest surviving dynasty. Nobody knows. Similarly, Pandyas, they have been there from Sangam period, 300 BCE, and then they have been continuing in one form or other till 18th century. And we have even descendants even now. So this kind of awareness about our dynasties, how they perform, is very good. And for that, my pronouns to the group for creating such an initiative. Today, we are going to talk about one segment. Let me share the presentation. Right. Good. So are you able to see the presentation clearly? So today the subject is, we are going to talk about the Imperial Cholas armed forces, an overview of their structure, the infrastructure, and the kind of engagements they handled. So this is going to be around 90 minutes kind of a talk. And at the end of this, you can have a question and answer session to clarify doubts, or we can always continue over email. So I'm going into the presentation, so I won't be able to see the full screen presentation and other things. So if there is any interruption, please call me. So before starting into this, I would like to credit on some of the content which I had taken, primarily for Google Endeavor for the content of photos and other things, and the Wikipedia Pujari, who gives beautiful collation on any subject. Again, most of it is questionable. What is interesting is the references it gives, where you can go to the original source and make our own conclusions. So we have done one or two series of military expedition related ones, which was a fairly detailed one. The initial one was done by Sridharan Ganapati and me. And this is the books we have referred, Kolas by Neelakanta Sastri, and History of South India, South Indian Influences, Sadasiva Parantartha, Appadurai, and then Herman Kulkeka, Nagapatnam to Swarnadeepa, and P.K. Gautam's reference on international and shipping technology of Cholas, Dr. K.V. Ramakrishna Rao's presentation in SAHG, where he talks about some latest findings on the ship shapes and other details. So this is a consolidation of various sources which has been put in a graphical. When we talk about imperial Cholas, the key factors for success, they have been ruling for 400 years continuously from the 9th century to the 13th century, and they had a fairly stable and a very long thing. So it was the most dominant dynasty of Tamil Nadu during that period and ruled for 400. Interestingly, crown princes worked with the monarch early on so that they had the experience. They were focusing on certain key areas, which was the Chola country, which is the area around Tanjavur, Trichy, and Kadalur. That was the core area. And they had very good relations, feudatories around them, and vassals around the buffer land all over Tamil Nadu border, so that any invasion need to cross these two boundaries before coming into core area. And the other beautiful thing is, instead of spreading the nation through the army, they spread the nation through the merchant networks. They closely worked with the merchant network, and because of this, they had a vast area of influence and influences all over Southeast Asia. In addition, they had standing army, standing navy, and support from their market forces. So they leverage these three things in a beautiful way and then handle their engagements in a successful way. Again, most of their wars, interestingly, were not for occupation. Some were for occupation, some were for plunder, some were just an expedition to give a warning, and like that. So there's a combination. So the focus is clear. Are they going there to occupy the country, or are they going there to demolish the opposition, or for funding? To start with, we split the Cholas into three segments. Early medieval Cholas, and then the imperial Cholas, and then later Cholas. This is the period we start from 850 to 1290. One of the early things at the initial stages of formation of Cholas was an interesting battle in Tirupurambiyam near Kumbakonam. So this is where at the time Pallavas and Pandyas were the two major forces, and Chola was living as a vassal to both of them, joining this side or that side. So this is near the tributary of Kaveri called the Kollidam River, and this is where the Tirupurambiyam open area is there. So here the Pallavas and Pandyas were fighting regularly. So Pallava Aparajita Varma was starting an invasion against Pandyas, and at the time Pandya Varagana too was invading from Pandya country. So this is the middle place where both of them clashed. To support Pallava, there is Ganga king Prithivipati and Chola. At the time, the first king of Cholas, middle Cholas, Vijayalaya. Some people say that Vijayala participated, but due to the age and other things, by the calculation, I don't think Vijayala participated. It was predominantly his son Aditya Chola participated in it. And some of the legends talk about Vijayala Chola coming there in this old age and trying to do the fighting, but it may not be. During this period, he might have retired and Aditya has taken over. This war was a turning point in Tamil Nadu history where, in one shot, the power of the victor and loser, both Pallava and Pandya, got weakened. It's a heady war, and then it was a 50-50, and then heavy loss on both sides. But ultimately, Pallavas reigned, and then Aditya was allowed to rule the Tanjavur area below this and more, something more. Later on, after some years, Aditya becomes powerful, and he puts on war with Aparajita Varma, and then he kills himself, and with that, the Pallava dynasty gets ended. So the animosity with the Pandya dynasty continues. So this is where the animosity starts and then it continues. His son, Parantaka, expands the country to the Pallava area and to most of the Pandya areas. So this was the war which, by Aditya's siding and then contributing and playing with the two sides, he was able to reduce the power of two kings and then finally become victorious. So this is one of the primary first wars of Cholas. Then from this they slowly progressed. Vijayalaya was there for 13 years and then his son ruled for 36 years. He expanded to a great extent, and his son Parandaga ruled for 48 years. And then this period, this is the period where the Cholas expanded to a fairly great extent, but the Rashtrakuta stopped it at the end. After that, it was chaos. Kandraditya was not a powerful king. He ruled only for 7 years, not contributing. And his son Aranjaya also ruled for 1 year. And then finally, the Parandaga too, another brother, he came up and then he ruled for 13 years. He is also called Sundara Chola, who is the father of Rajaraja. And finally, Rajaraja was supposed to take over, but he left this to his uncle Uttama, who is the son of Kadraditya, and he ruled for 15 years. So the nation was slowly expanding, in a unstructured way. To see the characteristics, during this period, they had this core area here, and then they have slowly expanded this up to Kanjipuram and outskirts of Madurai. This is the size of Cholas during that time. Again, the military is not a full-time standing army. It is mostly from Bellalas, agricultural part-time warriors, and then armies are maintained by feudatories, and then as and when needed, they consolidate and go for a fight. There's no structured training, regiments, and other things. And usually, this is an emotional war where all the leaders go to the front and fight, and sometimes get killed wrongly. And there is no succession plan, primarily like how on the later period. So there were some confusions on who will be the next king. So this is how they progressed in an unstructured way in the initial stages. Again, another interesting war during that period was the Takkolam war with the Rashtrakutas. The war with the Rashtrakutas have been in the making for some time. During Aditya's and Parandaga period, there was a marital relationship with Rashtrakuta, and primarily because of that, there were confusions in who will be ruling Cholas. One of the sons of the Rashtrakuta, it was not there. And then when there is a Rashtrakuta transition, Chola supported one of their sons, and it didn't happen for a long time. So that portion has been boiling for some time. And finally, the Rashtrakuta king Krishna III, the Kannadeva, after consolidating his position, he invaded Tamil Nadu. This is around near Kanjipuram. There is a place called Takkolam. And this has been anticipated by Parandaga. And the crown prince Rajaditya has been stationed on the northern front with a huge army just to prevent this. So this is where the main water supply to Chennai, the Kosasthala river, splits into two. This is Kuvam and this is Kosasthala. So there is a huge area, open area there. Supporting Rashtrakuta is his son-in-law, Bhutuka, and who also was attacking him along with Krishna. And Banas, who had a bitter experience with Chola earlier, they also supported Rashtrakutas. From Chola side, in addition to the Rajaditya, Arikula Kesari, one more son, was also there. And from Chera side, Vellan Kumaran, who is the general of the army, is also there. In the fight that ensued, again, it was an emotional fight and everybody fighting from front. What happened is, Bhutuka attacked the elephant. This is only a graphic representation, not the true painting. Attacked the elephant of Rajaditya, climbed here, and then he killed him. And suddenly in the battlefield, the crown prince died, and then they lost the will to fight, and there was total chaos, and the Chola army was routed. Again, by reading some of the inscriptions, some of the Tamil Nadu inscriptional experts say that first Bhutuka was praying, saying surrender, and then he changed the stance and left and killed him. But if you actually see the Kannada inscription, which is there in Bhutuka's place, there seems to be a translation error where the Kannada people say that he was crouching and then he was leaping onto the elephant to kill it. So there is no malpractices involved. But whatever happened, ultimately Rajaditya was killed by Bhutuka in direct fight. Again, this is a failure of structured armed protection where there is no formation and there is no structured protection layer for the king. And because of that, they could easily target the king and kill him. And once the king is killed, the second in line, Velan Kumaran or nobody pushed back, and the Chola army was totally dejected. Losing their beloved crown prince was a major hit, and then they were totally defeated. So Krishna stays there around 10 years, and then till Rajaraja time, he continues control of Tondamandala. The lesson learned is unstructured battles doesn't help. Again, Gangas become stronger and they rule for another 100 years in a strong way till defeated by Rajaraja. Again, recently, last week in Takkolam, there is a CASF training center where our Interior Minister Amit Shah visited, and then he named the center very recently last week after Rajaditya in memory of his valor. So this is another landmark battle. The lesson learned is that no structured formation, and then there is no fallback control, succession, and then backup controls. So the moment the king is publicly killed, they lose momentum. Then again, there is one more emotional fight near Chevur. This is again fighting with the Pandyas. So from the last fight, Pandyas have been becoming a permanent villain. So the Veera Pandya attacks Arigula Kesar again, who participated in the earlier thing. And then in the battle, Arinjaya also seems to be participating. There is a king and he is a crown prince. Arinjaya, I think both are, one of them is killed in that battle. So what Veerapandya does is he puts a title, Cholan Talai Kontra Veerapandyan. What does it mean is the king who killed Chola or who has beheaded the Chola. So this title infuriates Cholas to the core, and then they wanted to win. Later on, after Arinjaya, Parandaga Chola comes to the as a king, and then his son Aditya Karikala was the crown prince. So he wanted revenge and he starts hunting Veerapandya, and then another skirmish happens. Along with his Pallava general Pathivendra also supports him, along with another general Kodumbalu Pudi with Vikramakesari. So in the Chevur, the battle was lost because primarily they couldn't get a much larger army. So Veerapandyan is defeated and he was on the run. Finally, he was hunted and beheaded. After this, the tit for tat continues. So all three, Aditya Karikala, Pathivendra, and Pudi Vikramakesari, take a title, Veerapandyan Talaikonda. So this title will be there in all their inscriptions. So it perpetuated the animosity to the next level. So the Pandyas were infuriated, and finally, even before he could become king, Aditya Karikala is murdered. So if you see the popular movie Ponniyin Selvan, which was last year released in part 1 and part 2. The story is about how Aditya Karikara is killed. That is the core story. So, Cholas, if you see the later period, they have been having marital relationship with so many people, and then they had a very good connection. But with Pandyas, they could never do this. This animosity continues through the next 200 years, and there were continuous engagement. The moment they go out of their core area for an invasion, and there will be a Pandya attack from backside. This irritating thing continued for 200 years and finally led to the demise of Cholas after they lost all their external areas. So this was the main headache which killed Cholas ultimately. Now, after the early Cholas, we come to the medieval imperial Cholas. So this constitutes of some 5 kings: the Raja, his son, his 3 beautiful grandsons, and then a illustrious cousin, sorry, illustrious nephew. The first one, the Raja, one of the greatest kings, emperors, he reigned for 29 years, and then he captured Madurai, Kandalur Sarai, Vengi, Chalukya, Talakkad, and then Ceylon, Gulbarga, Kollipake, Banavasi. Everything he captured and almost filled up to the Deccan Plateau. His son Rajendra took one step forward and he completed the capture of Sri Lanka. He went up to Kalinga and then Musangi, and then he had 2 major expeditions, one on Ganges and another one on the Sri Vijaya expedition in 1025. So the reach of Chola land reached the peak during Rajendra. Again, the one negative thing was they were never able to subdue the Chalukyas fully. So his 3 sons ruled one by one. The first son, Raja, he did Kalyanapuram. He attacked Kolhapur, he attacked Kalinga, and he died in war front in Kuppam. His second son, his brother, continued from the war front, and then he controlled the Rohana thing, and then he was having continuous fight with the Agav Malla, who was the Chalukya king, who have been fighting for 3 generations. And finally, the third son ruled, Veera Rajendra, and then who did the Sri Vijaya dispute, and then who had repeated fight with Chalukya in 5 battles. Kampli, Vengi, and then finally the Agav Malla commits suicide in Kudal Sakama. After this, there is a weak link, Adi Rajendra, who ruled for a short period. By the time they realize their folly and then have marital relationship with Chalukya Vikramaditya, and then he supports to retain this. Ultimately, Kulotunga claims titles to the throne. He is the mother side for 2 of the daughters of Rajaraja's daughter, Rajendra daughter, are married into this. He comes in and then he continues and then he retains most of the core areas and brings it under control. So this is the peak of the expansion and consolidation of the wars during imperial Cholas. If you see in the map, by now they have covered almost this area, and then this is their core control, and then this is all the areas of influence under Rajendra Chola. From the early haphazard way of managing things, what they had done is The feudatories are under control. You have a full-time army, and you also have a mercenary units expanded as and when needed. The navy was revamped in a big way as a force multiplier, and then permanent regiments in strategic places in Kanjipuram, Madurai, and several locations, and defined military practices. Again, from this area, there have been clear definition. When Rajaraja was the king, he was in capital. Most of the wars and other things was conducted by Rajendra during Rajaraja period itself. Like that, the junior is always under control and it is very easy to take over. And the other beautiful structure they made is the layering. They had lot of feudatories who had marital relationship with royalty for a long time. And then from early times, they have been supporting with the military for wars. And then they were serving as leaders or generals or ministers in the Chola army. So this is their core delta area, where it's a rich, fertile land, and then the rice production and other things is at the maximum. So we had Muttarayars, we have Irukkuveliyars, and then we have Kodumbodu Irukkuveliyars, and then Paduvettariyars here, and then Vanar from Thiruvallam, Sambhuvarayar in this area, Malayman in Tirukkovilur, Kadavarar at Sendamangalam, Milladudar and Kadavur. So around this, you had a very strong supporting feudatories. So any invasion from Cheras or this side Ganga and anything, first they need to defeat these feudatories. So they were putting as a very good protection layer around the core area. During Rajaraja time, he talks about the lands he has won. He also created one culture where he starts Meikiti. What it is, this is in Tamil. What it says that what are the lands he has conquered. So this Meikirti concept continues throughout the thing. This is what has helped us to know which countries were won, which countries were won at what time. So a Meikirti written in the first year inscription will contain only few countries, whereas by fifth year it will more and more countries will be added. With that, he has got a huge list of, he has covered Venginadu, Gangapadi, Nodambapadi, Tadigevadi, Kollam, Kalingam, all these things he has captured. So this band of vassals around this under suzerainty created the second level of purpose. We have the core country, we have the second level of feudatories, and this third level of vassals. Padavaraya and Kalagasti, Telugu Choda, Nellur, Vaigumbas here, and Gangarayas in Bengaluru, Nolambas, and then Western Gangas here, Talakkad, Adiyamans in Krishnagiri, Kongu Cholas. So the entire thing is protected. The only weak point, Achilles heel, is the Pandyas here, who kept on troubling from this area. Otherwise, any other approach from here, they are well protected with 3 layers. So this is one of the strategical success of Cholas. So again, they were very clear about the segmentation and how they are going to rule, which one they are controlling. The core area is secured with the king in control. The sons ruling the vassal states as viceroys. For Ceylon 1%, for Madurai 1%, and for Vengi 1%, for Ganga 1%, like that. There are several sons who were working as generals, and then one is appointed as a successor. So transition is very clear, and then they know the warfare as well as the administration very well. So this is core country and the extended country. Then they have very good interest in these areas, Palu, Kalinga, Keda, and then Chaya, where there is military as well as financial interest there. So they actively supported a merchant guilds, and then whenever there were some problems for them, they intervened. Most of their wars were for support of merchants rather than for expansion. During the Rajendra times, he is famous for two major expeditions, one to Ganges and another one to Srivijaya. We are talking about the Ganges expedition. Primarily, they say that he wanted his new capital, Gangaikonda Cholapuram, to be anointed from water from Ganges. So he did the invasion. But it is not a simple invasion. It took years and years of planning and structure. So it is not just for the namesake, it is also to have control on some of the critical ports on the way in the Vengi country and in the Odisha and in the Calcutta. They wanted to have some control or oversight over the key ports of the eastern coast. Rajendra's Mekirti, he talks in detail about how it was done in the sequence and other things. He mentions the detailed thing. I am not going into the details because it will be another one full presentation by itself. But he has beaten so many countries to go all the way up here. The interesting part is that not all of them were won by war. So if you see this, this is how he started from here up to this friendly country. Vengi at the time, we had a conflict with Chalukyas. So what he quietly agrees is transfers the ownership of the Vengi country to the Chalukyas. They acknowledge and then he gets a passing. And then he goes into here. He has a fight. He has a fight at Chakarkotam and Kosala, Takaralada, and then he goes all the way up to Bengal. The interesting achievement in this component is when he crosses Ganges, he did by aligning his elephants in a line and then build a bridge like a pontoon bridge of nowadays, and then he crossed the Ganges. The Palas and others are not expecting this, and then they were defeated, and then he took a return path. So this is done by Rajendra staying here and his generals going there. And on the way, they also attacked Kalinga and then had some more control. Primarily, on the way up, they bypassed the core Kalinga and then they took this route and then returned. They fought with Kalinga also. And then at the time, Rajendra came all the way up to Mahendragiri through ship. And then he also awarded the generals several grants and other things, and they come back. So it was a very planned exercise and which were sustained. And primarily, even though it was sent for bringing auspicious water, it is primarily to say who is the king and he won't hesitate if any of his business or his merchants are played up with. So that is a warning and that is a area. So with this, he had better control over the eastern coast. After Kulothunga, he voluntarily reduced the area of influence. So he wanted to have initial support. He sided with the merchant and he reduced the excess duty and he left the merchant community on their own. With this, gradually the control started declining. And after Kulothunga, Vikrama ruled for 17 years, and then Kulothunga II for 17, and then Rajaraja II for 17, Rajaraja for 15, And Kulothunga III was the last well-known grand king of the dynasty. So he had at least some amount of control, some amount of thing. He was doing some amount of victory. And finally, after that, Rajaraja III, Rajendra III, and it went into a demise. So the decline started with the loss of Kalinga. Hoysalas became stronger. They came into Tamil Nadu politics. They started controlling. The vassals, who were the key things, become independent rulers. Kanji, the end of the core area, was repeatedly invaded by everybody. And then continuous war with Pandya on the other side slowly led to the demise. So if you see this, what was a good position during thing? Kulothunga could retain some amount of thing. All our external influences are gone, but at least the core country and something around the core country is still there. So he annexed Vengi to part of Chola country. Merchant support was there, and they were allowed to do their own protection army. The buffer zone of vassals is almost gone. Feudatories again started revolting. The core delta area is alone available till the end. So this is how a grand dynasty started, refined, improved, and then into a demise by 400 years. Let us see in terms of engagement, what type of engagement they did. That is the interesting one. During the initial period, most of the wars were expansion of territories to be controlled by us or under suzerainty or by his sons. This is example of Pandyas, Gangas, Nolabas, Cheras. This is expansion. Then later on, lot of raids happened, which was primarily destroy and plunder to acquire wealth and then to support and expand army and riches for building the temples. So during Rajaraja Rajendra period, lot of this happened to Sri Lanka, Kerala, Lakshadweep, and all these things. They were never staying there. It is plunder. The third category is surgical strikes. These were primarily warning and then to ensure that they toe the line. And these are surgical strikes. Primarily the Srivijaya Empire, the Kalinga Wars, 2 wars, and the Maldives pirates issue. All of them were due to their interference with the Chola merchant groups. So the warning was given, so they hit back and then they don't stay there and come back. Again, in addition to the external security, the internal security also was well established. That is in particular during the Kulothunga and later period. When excess duty was abolished and instead the merchant community were sponsored and allowed to have a mercantile security for their army, it built a different kind of a structure where they had a very, very hierarchical army by each mercantile group. Now, people say a lot of things about Chola army, very big and other things, and the passions bounds boundless. They say that Cholas had ships where they can take hundreds, 500 elephants in one ship, and then crazy. Again, there are no clear, visible things, but there are some statements. This is one of the statement is that the government owns 60,000 barbers. Each elephant is very high, and then they are very, very great for close quarters fights. This is mentioned by a Chinese geographer around 1225, around later Kulothunga time. Again, another statement by their arch enemies, Western Chalukyas, Irava Venkata Satyasaraya from Dharwad. There is an inscription says that Rajendra Chola invaded with a force of 9.5 lakh force, and then he went into a rampage. He killed children, he killed women, and then he destroyed worship places and other things. He was not fighting as per the moralities of war. Still, Western Chalukyas won that. That inscription was there. So it also gives a upper side number which was accepted by the enemies. So this is one of that inscription in a hero stone. Let us keep these numbers aside and see how the Imperial Chola army was structured. The base was Padai. Padai is a military unit where it has got elephant corps, Tura, the cavalry, Gajatura, Kalat Padai, infantry, Kala Padai is your local regiments, and then Usi Padai, this is the advanced corps, and Maruthuvarani means the medical corps. So this is part of the Padai. Padai means a force, a army. And then they had support units. This is called Nadapu. This is the commissariat, where it is in charge of supply of food and equipment, and it takes care of movement, hospitalization, and other things. They also had another one for the admiralty and logistics. So procurement, supply, maintenance of equipment, and then coordination at the captured countries. They also had kadagams. Kadagams is garrisons or cantonments. So in addition to having permanent troops, these troops were staying in a permanent structured fortified places, in particular in areas of troubles like Pandya country and in South Arcot, like that. In addition to that, they had Nilaypurams. Nilaypurams are military colonies. So the permanent garrison and fort mixed together, and in inscriptions they talk about Kerala Singha Vadanadu in North Pandya country had 5 Nilaypurams. So 5 different forts named after the Chola Pandyas. So this is the permanent structure where you have the military, we have the supporting corps, we have the transport corps, and we have the cantonments, and we have the military colonies. So that this is a full-time army. They keep on practicing. In war time, in peace time, they also contributed to building, maintaining temples, as well as building water bodies. Again, a surprise omission here is the chariots. We talk about elephants, cavalry, and in the 4 types of armies, the chariots is the surprise omission, and this has been not of use. I mean, in particular after later Gupta's usage of chariots in wars and other things. In particular, the country has been slowly getting reduced. In this place, people who can afford, they were using more and more elephants like Rajaraja. And then Rajaraja was also a major procurer of horses from Bengal and also from the major market from Arabia. When we talk about Padai, which we saw the actual army, how it is organized, and the king is this one, so he is named as a Chakravarti. And under this, you have 3 Senais. Senais is some units, and there is a Senadipati. So normally it is equal to a marshal in current terms. And then each Senai will have talabs. Talab means subunits. So if you have 3 Senai, so if you assume 3 talams, then you will have 9 talams overall. So each talam is managed by a general or talapati. Each talam will have 3 anis, anipati or a colonel. So then each unit, this ani or unit, will have a particular group of composition. This is all from inscriptions. So it has got elephant corps, 3 elephant corps units, each 500 elephants, and then people to support this. And it has got 3 cavalry units, each with 1,000 horses and supporting people. So if you take one Sene, it is around 13,500 elephants and 27,000 cavalry. Then you have the Kalat Padai, the infantry, where 6 units were there, each with 3,000 men on ground. So total, if you see for 27 anis, it is coming to 162,000. Talapade, auxiliary and support, replacement and other things for rear guard and guerrilla action. You have 2 units, each of 200 men and 1,000 horses. So total comes to 36,000 and 18,000. And you have the medical corps attached to it. And straight corps, Padai, who go in the front doing reconnaissance and then who also do guerrilla warfare at the back. So a minimum, when you take one Sene, it is 3 into 3, 9. So you can work out 13,000 elephants for this entire 3 Senes. 13,500 elephants, 45,000 horses, and soldiers here 54 plus 27 plus 162 plus 36, and plus support another 21,000. So around 300,000. So if one Sene can contain 300,000 as a unit, and if you have 3 Senes, it comes to the 900,000, which is mentioned by the enemy Chalukya benefits. If you see the total count, one unit has got around 13,500 elephants, whereas the Chinese observer, his observation was around 50 or 45,000 elephants. So 3 Senes, it will come to 13,000. So the numbers, how we work it out here, and the observations tallies. Chola regiments is structured with several names and then groups. So these are inferred from inscriptions and various temples and other activities. So we had elephant corps, people are called as Ane Atkal or Ane Pagar, who are the elephant mahouts. Again, the interesting practice is they are called by the king's name, the current ruling king's name, or the king who formed the regiment. Similarly, archers, Pandita Chola, Terinda Villigal. The Terinda term means he knows. Not that he knows, he is an expert. He is an expert archer. So Terinda means, a inferred meaning is expert. So Uttama Chola, expert archers. Similarly, in cavalry, there are Kudrai Chevagar. Light infantry, there are many such names. Parivaraktar, Jagannatha, Singala, all are names of the kings or their pet names. Similarly, they also had the Valangai Velaikaragal. See, these are all king's personal staffs. Basically, they have been recruited from older time, from their own family villages, and then they were earlier working as farmers and part-time warriors. But their commitment to the king is absolute. So if the king, they were not able to protect the kings, they commit suicide. That is the kind of security guards they had. So there are multiple things named after Alage, Chola, Chandrapra, Kama, Ilaya Rajaraja, Chatrisika. All are nicknames of the kings. Rajaraja, Raja Vinoda, and Vikrama Bharana, all are names of the kings, and these troops were named after the ruling king. Similarly, they had personal security guard, Veera Chola, Anukar, Anukyar. These are all personal bodyguards, male as well as female, and then the entrance keepers, the two entrances of the temple, and then the other bodyguards. So they had a very, very structured unit which was mentioned in inscriptions. So all this we derive from inscriptions. Again, when you talk about the life in Chola army, they enjoyed it with pride and liberty. Okay, so most of the kings were familiar with the army because they have worked in their army and then they have led from elephant back, and all the crown princes trained with alongside king and admin as well as warfare. So they were part of the army, they understand, and then they have worked in this one. Similarly, the generals, they got lot of credit, and then they were mentioned in inscription, they were given lot of grants, and then they were given share of the booty, and they were allowed to build temples and then put inscriptions on their name also, like a small king. The king's regiments had their own attachment and then their own vow of faith to end their life. So they did a lot of peacetime work, the cantonment side of things. In Nagarkoil side, they have built several temples and then building new lakes, and then so they worked and then they blended with the country where they were staying. And the commanders, they were recognized and they took pride, and many of them were named after the king. Brahma Raja is called as Raja Chola Brahmarajan. So Raja Kesari Muvendan. He is a Virupparayar. He takes it Jayangunda Chola Virupparayar. Uttama Chola Muvendan. Like that, the generals had their prefix of their favorite king under whom they worked. Some of them worked under 2 or 3 kings also. So this is the level of attachment the army had with the kings. Now, having blended this kind of a setup, another, we are talking about 2 interesting wars during the peak of the Chola period. One is the Koppam war with Chalukya Agavamalla. Chalukya Agavamalla is one of the famous kings of Chalukya, and who have been repeatedly fighting with 4 generations of kings, and then finally he succumbs. There, in one of his earlier fights, Someshwara, he is called Someshwara also, he is fighting with Raja, who is the son of Rajendra, the first son of Rajendra. And then they have come all the way to attack in Koppal, which is near the Kalyani, the capital of Chalukyas. So this is near your the famous Hampi and your Tungabhadra Dam, Hosapatim. So, in addition to the king, the second, his brother is also coming there, but he is there in the background. Again, as usual, emotional fight, and Raja fights from forefront, and then they put a trap for him, and then they surrounded, and finally, Raja is killed in the forefront by attack from several generals of Kalyani Chalukya. But unlike the Takolam war, which we saw earlier in the beginning of Cholas, where the Cholas panicked and lost the bill and the war, here there is a quick succession and a military leadership, which ensured that they turned a loss to a strategic victory. Here what happens is, Raja is dead and then he goes into the background, but in his place Rajendra Raja steps in, and then he crowns himself in the battlefield and he announces and say that your king is not dead, your king is here, let us go and win. And then he leads it and he turns a potential total disaster into a victory, and he lost, and then he hunts them all the way up to Kalyanapuram, and then he sacks Kalyanapuram. Again, but Agavamalla does not leave it, and then he continues the fight, and again, after Raja, Rajendra, and Veera Raja, all the three brothers he fights, and finally he succumbs to his old age and then drowns in Tungabhadra. Again, the Cholas continue the war with Chalukyas till Kulothunga time, but never able to hold on to land beyond the Tungabhadra river. Always they will lose something and then they will immediately recover. Again, like the other thing, at a later point, his third son, Veera Rajendra, also does the marital arrangement, and he gives his daughter to Vikramaditya IV. And then when he comes into the throne, Vikramaditya supports him for his suzerainty, but ultimately Kulothunga defeats him. So one try with the Chalukyas in marital front ends in a failure. So this is one war. Again, the second interesting thing is the Vengi war and the various Kalinga war. When we talk about Kalinga, we immediately have a visualization. Most of the Tamil historians have this feedback so that Kalinga war means going all the way up to Bhubaneswar. It is not so. There is a misconception. They didn't go all the way. It is only halfway. Okay. To understand the concept, let us see how Vengi and various Kalingas were there during the period. So Kalinga has a history of changing capital. They started from Mukkalingam, they changed so many times, and then Vengi, South Kalinga, Kakinada, Eastern Ganga, Mukkalingam, Banapur, Binka, and Jajpur, and finally, when they were big, they established Cuttack. So his capital has moved all over the place. Okay, so they started with Vengi Chalukya from 11th century, and then at the same time, Northern Kalinga and Eastern Ganga were focusing on Mukkalingam. And then Southern Kalinga was focusing on Eluru and other related areas and Kakinada. Later on, from 550, Shaladbava shifted to Banapur, and then Bomakara shifted to Binka, and the Somavanshis ruled from Jajpur, and finally all this is consolidated by Kalingas of Eastern Gangas, three Kalinga Eastern Gangas. They moved their capital from Mukkalingam all the way up to Bhubaneswar. But the events of 11th century happens in Mukkalingam, and at the time Bhubaneswar was not the capital. It was shifted later. So let us see the first Kalinga war. A lot of small battles, primarily due to suppression of Chola merchant groups as usual. And this is primarily, this is an area where a lot of business happens from the Kakinada port, and that is where they get hit. So from South Kalinga, Bhima and his predatories came in, and from North Kalinga, Vikramachola. Vikramachola is not the king. He was a, this is during Kulothunga one time. Vikramachola is a person. He was ruling as a viceroy of Vengi. He, along with another feudatory of Pandyas, Parantaka, they handled these two, and then finally it was a victory. And then South Kalinga again becomes a feudate. So this is the first war in 1096. Okay. So by this, they are well established in Vijayawada and Yelloor area. The second Kalinga war is primarily said as refusal of duties and your tributaries and the torture of Chola merchants. So again, the invasion starts from the local areas. And Karnagara Toldaman, who was a leader in the earlier invasions and others, he comes all the way from Tamil Nadu, and then Goda Bhima comes in. So they cross Eluru. By now they have control over Visakhapatnam, and then they hit Srikakulam. And to defend, Anantavarma Chodaganga, who was the king at the time, is actually the second generation nephew of Kulothunga, but there is animosity and they don't pay the tax. So Kalinga Yengaraya, the chief minister, advanced against him, but still they proceeded on the war. The chiefs were killed, and the Chola and Veera Chola was siding with Anantavarma Chodaganga because Veera Chola's daughter is married to Anantavarma. So finally, Chodaganga was captured and then tribute extracted, and he was allowed to continue. So again, like I said earlier, the popular perception of Kalinga wars is that we are going all the way to Bhubaneswar. It doesn't go all the way to Bhubaneswar. It ends in Srikakulam. Bhubaneswar became the capital, or the Cuttack became the capital only later by 1211 after the war. This indirectly helps Chodaganga, where by repeated fights and other things, slowly the others are weakened, and Anantavarma expands his territory and then controls the entire Odisha and then makes his capital to Cuttack later. Now, we are coming to the final wars. The war with Pandya, which we started as the first war in Sevur, that continues. And during Kulothunga times, there is so much of interference from Sri Lanka, where they were actively supporting one Pandya or other. So there is a conflict, continuous conflicts. So first, during Raja time, this general defeats Singhala generals and Veera Pandya, and who gives to the opposing team of Kulasekara. These are brothers or different cousins, we don't know. Then, after some time, Kulasekara turns the thing, he doesn't pay. During Raja, another general, Annan Pallavarayan, defeats again Singhala generals and Kulasekara and gives Madurai back to Veerapandiyan. After some time, Veerapandiyan turns, and then Kulothunga III, by the time Kulothunga has come, and then he attacks, and then he kills Veerapandiya, and then gives Madurai to Vikrama, who was the son of Kulasekara. So the story is, they frequently, instead of killing both, the Cholas frequently support the other party who is not supported by Sri Lanka, and continue the war, and wasted a lot of resources. In 1188, Nettur, finally Kulothunga defeats Chera and the Veerapandiya, who was protesting and in support of this one, and finally pardons both and gives some lands to both of them. And again, they resist. In Tirupattur, Kulothunga defeats Jadavarma Kulasekara, who is the son of Vikrama, okay, the third generation, and Veerapandiya, and destroys Madurai. This time, he is in a violent act, he totally destroys Madurai, the palace and other things. And finally, again, the destroyed Madurai, he gives it to him back after 3 years. All these fightings and destruction of Madurai puts it into a boil. And finally, in 1219, his brother, Kulathunga's brother, Maravarman Sundara Pandyan, comes in. He becomes the resurgence of Pandyas. He defeats Rajaraja too. Popularly, people say that he defeated Kulathunga. It does not. The timelines are not there. He defeats Rajaraja III and then destroys Tanjavur. But again, he does the same story. After some time, since he is Mamanar Prasad, his father-in-law is Ramanatha from the Hoysala thing, they put pressure, and then due to the pressure, he gives back the land to Rajaraja. But finally, Chadavarma Sundara Pandya defeats Rajendra, and then the 1279 Chola country is annexed to Pandya, and there are no further issues. With this, the Chola's direct line stops. So this is a series of fights with Pandya, repeated fights, which started 8, 10 generations ago. This has been the downfall. Had they been cooperative and then they had marital relationship, and somehow if these two could have worked, the Chola country or this one would have sustained for a longer period. Every time they go into one fight, they are always covering first their back and then only they are proceeding. That is a problem with Pandyas. So far, we have seen only the military side. Let us quickly see some 10 minutes the Chola naval military might. From early times, Periplos the Erythrician Sea mentions that lot of activities from Chola, but again, these were more on escort ships. And Majumdar feels that the Chola ships were armed troop carriers for land-based war, and their philosophy is not to go for sea-based warfare. So they were doing it like a force multiplier. Again, we don't get any clear diagrams or references or pictures of iconography of Chola Navy. And what we get is this kind of naval ships were used, and many of them are converted merchant ships. So this is what our Indian government has also published as terms. Again, but there is some amount of documentation available on how Chola Navy is organized. Again, we have the Chakravarti, we have Jaladipati, like your naval chief, and we have several fleets. Perivu, which is under an Adipati or Nayagan, who is an admiral. And each fleet has got multiple Ganam or squadrons headed by a Ganapati, who is a rear admiral. And Mandalam, which is a group, and Mandala Adipati, who is a vice admiral. And Kalam, a fleet vessel, a Kaladipati, who is the commander of the fleet, captain. So each Kalam or fleet one had multiple groups of officers, like Kapu, the executive officer or weapons officer, and Sevai, the master chief and the engineering officer, who is in charge of all the oarsmen, and Itimar, the marine or the major captains, who are predominantly in charge of the boarding party. Okay, so these are the composition of officers. This had 3 or 4 different types of ships. One is the Marakkalam, which is 4 times bigger than the smaller one, Padavu. And the next one is Dhoni, which is 70 feet by 20 feet and 12 feet diameter. And then no deck and only one mast. So this logically would be having 4 to 5 masts and column. So these are the various types of ships that are mentioned. Again, they were used by different them. There is a Shastra for building ships and then building warships. They talks about different types of ships, Akramandaram and others. So they were using this kind of ships also. Some of the battleships were there with flamethrower and catapult, and they were primarily on escort duty. Ocean-going troopers. These are huge troop carriers with quarters. Royal ships with the quarters on the backside, and cargo ships with the large quarters and then huge capacity, and landing crafts which are shallow, thick for invasion and unloading of cargo. So this is how the naval organization was structured. Again, in addition to the naval, there is an auxiliary forces of Chola, which is a mercantile navy, which is also supporting them. So primarily used for peaceful patrol, escorting convoys, and in case of need, the captured merchant vessels are converted for naval support and customization of captured enemy patterns, and used as logistic support. So, and then they were also used in blockade of the harbors and other things. And mainly they did naval battle at the littoral zone only. They didn't go into ocean going. This is the auxiliary force. And the primary duty is to beachhead, to set up a beachhead and then reinforce the army in terms of support. So instead of Rajendra going by horse all the way, he will go by ship up to a certain point in Odisha, and then from there he will continue. Like that, the support also is handled by this auxiliary forces. Here, the interesting role played by the mercantile groups is critical. Cholas were nurturing and closely coordinating their commerce. Commerce was their power also. So there are many mercantile groups that were flourishing under Cholas. One is the Nana Desis. So they are there from Pallava times. They focus on overseas trades, and then several references are there. In the 14th century, there is a very interesting inscription on Nana Desis. And there is Manik Gramatar. So they are capital merchants, and then they are focusing mainly on the Kaveri belt. They live and then they work in cities like Kanji, Mallai, Nandipuram, and then they also handle the city governance. That is the difference between Nana Desi and Manik Gramatar. So they don't travel overseas, but they manage the city metropolitan setup, and then they do trade like Chettiars. Volunteers are from Sri Lankan, southern and other areas. They get settled in Tamil Nadu. They built a lot of temples, and then they also do a lot of philanthropic work. Anjivannathar operated out of Nagai or Pondicherry, and then they focus on some specific Arabic and Mohammedan countries predominantly in the Western India trade routes. And then they excelled in Rameswaram and in the Kerala side. So most of the trade were on this. And Chitrameli Periyanata, there is another business group which had agri-produced process, and then they were having their own guild and merchant services. The biggest one of them is Ayavole Ainu Tour, which is an international thing. So wherever the Chola influences, all these places, they had branches. And then they expanded, and they were controlling in this area some of the forts and some of the merchant grounds in Pegu as well as other areas also. So this is a merchant community which was earlier Ayavole Ainu Tour, which is in Aihole, from Aihole, and then they were fully flourishing in Tamil Nadu. And later, the Nana Desis and Manik Ramatars, who were seen earlier, all these merged with them into a combined Nana Desi, this is IIRF. So a big merchant community. So they have built the Kaneshwar temple in Ganzo, and then they were Nagara Senapati, not a Chittiar. So they were in charge of cities in Sumatra and other areas. And then they controlled mercantile forts here. The Piranmalai inscription talks about a congregation of mercantile groups which contributed to temple, where they talk about Yerivira Pattanam, the mercantile towns, 8 mercantile towns, and 32 satellite areas where between mercantile Yerivira Pattanam, and then Kadigevalam. These are all gudons, 64 gudons, which are dedicated to this. So they had an extensive supply, and then they have security also. So the security concept is called Valanjiya Senadipati, Nana Desi Dantanayaka, Kaikola Perumbadai Regiment. So they had their own regiment for security, and then they have military people like Yeriviras who were security people with the spears and others. So this international guild was having influence all over the zone. Whenever they had some problem and other things, they give or protest to the Chola, who immediately take action. Similarly, they also give inputs and feeds on new happenings in various areas so that the Cholas are aware, and then they take preventive action in restoring balance of trade. Okay. Now, coming to the Rajendra's Southeast Asian expedition, there is a background to it. If you see this, the trade routes from India come all the way across the Malacca Strait, and then he turns Champa, and then he goes to China. So the direct route to Song. So this area was a control area, and Srivijaya was trying to control and influence by asking them to come to our port and then pay the duty. At the same time, China was trying to push his power and say that instead of the land silk route, they were pushing the merchant to take the sea silk route in line with Srivijaya. So that means again paying extra duty to Srivijaya to go to India. So this created a lot of problem with Ayavode and Manikramangal, and then they escalated to Rajendra for help. Rajendra has been doing twofold approach right from beginning, where the Manigramams have their own setup in Takupa, where is a fort-to-bed settlement, and then from 1000 there has been several envoys were there, they were gifts, and then Rajendra sends an invoice to Srivijaya. At the same time, he does reconnaissance to reach Kedar, and he does a basic small attack on Malabar to ensure that whether he can travel 1,000 kilometers plus and attack ports and then receive. Once he is successful, he starts experimenting. While he does the diplomatic discussions, when the Chinese emperor pushes for shift of Silk Road to the sea, Rajendra does the expedition to Kedah, Vijayanagara, and ensures that we are supreme. So with this action, there is no envoys to China from Southeast Asia for the next 3-4 years after the Chola expedition. Again, after several years, Veera Rajendra also repeats a similar expedition to control a dispute between Srivijaya brothers. And after that, 1070, Kulothunga himself goes to China as an envoy to clarify issues from Srivijaya and the wrong perceptions. Later, Suryavarma, the Khmer king, who built Angkor Wat, gives a precious stone to Kulothunga as a gift. So this kind of war as well as diplomacy has been continuously happening to ensure that the Chola mercantile interests are kept under control. When it comes to the campaign on 1025, Rajendra's forces start from Nagapattinam, but it is not a huge vessels and a huge army. It is an army, it is a navy, and it is a collection of vessels having army people, invasion army, and it lands at Manakavaram, Nicobar Islands, and then consolidates, it's going to Ilamuri, and then Kedar, where they already have influence. All these places are having Tamil merchant influence. So each place, more and more ships are added, more military, and then whatever skirmishes happens, more warships are added. And by the time they actually attack Srivijaya in Pannai and Jambai, they have a huge army, and then with this they enter Srivijaya Palampang, and then they capture it. So this is how a campaign with fairly reasonable size of ships from all the way outside was done. They enter into a pact and then they go back. But the merchant influence in this area still continues. Thus, to sum up, I'll be finishing in 5 minutes. To sum up, if you see the 400 years, the initial years were on a haphazard, emotional, and personal based thing. CMM, when you talk about as the IT perspective or ISO perspective, this is at CMM level 2 or 3. Then moving over to the Imperial Cholas, we had full-time army, mercenary unit, permanent regiments, and refined military practices, clear transition, and they had a huge area under their control. And later on, gradually, that got reduced when the areas of influence slowly shrink, the outer area gone, and the core Chola area alone retained. So the buffer zone of vassals lost, feudatories revolted. So to conclude, how Chola military might survived for 400 years. One, transition from emotional fighters to organized multidisciplinary military action. That was done by the time of Rajaraja. And structured succession plan. From Rajaraja times, they were clearly working. In fact, many of the victories of the kings were by his sons. If Rajaraja lists around 7 or 8 major victories, only 2, 3 he personally involved. The rest of the victories were by Rajendra Chola. The same continues for Rajendra Chola. So they become governors, and then the second crown prince is announced way on, and then in fact in certain cases, when both of them co-worked for 15 years together. So they are appointed as administrators of regions, as viceroys, where they take part in war fronts as well as administration of regions. So when the actual crowning comes, he smoothly moves into the role with minimal gap. And they had their local feudatory chiefs guarding the core area, which had marital relations. They were the generals, and they were the people who give the marital relationship. And then they have won over a good buffer zone all around Tamil Nadu as a core country, which was a deterrent for others. The only pain in the leg is the Pandyas, who were a continuous threat. So again, in a wider area, there were some very good marital alliances with Vengi and others who helped at times of longer conflicts. They ensured their revenue, they ensured that trade and commerce is not impacted by way of expeditions, where military as well as naval expeditions, it is not for occupation. They go there, destroy, give a message, have control, and come back. And finally, strategic decision of Kulothunga to consolidate and only taxes. So the abolition of taxes also gives some amount of freedom to the mercantile to take care of the military protection and other things. And it also extended the reign by another 100 years. Again, my point of their key success is that they know what to govern and what not to govern. So they had their clear delineation of core area which they want to protect at any cost, and then the area of control which they use as buffer as well as revenue and for other support, and then their area of mercantile influence. So mercantile influence can come or go, but there they had only expeditions. They never went in and stayed and tried to control that area. There has been many instances where they have gone and tried to control by other kings, which has failed, and it is a costly affair. But Cholas never tried to do that, except their tryst with the Chalukyas. So these factors cover how Cholas were able to survive 400 years with a structured military, structured processes, and with structured engagement rules on this. So thank you for listening to it. If there are several interesting lectures like this in my YouTube channel, Babu for Heritage, and if you want, you can subscribe and then view similar historical and temple architecture, commerce, and other related areas in this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for such a wonderful and insightful presentation. And now I could understand why the government of India has introduced the concept of professor of practice. So, respected Professor, sir, really remarkable. As a banker, you shifted to history, art, culture, and then contributing in that manner. Hats off, sir. Now the session is open for questions.
Sir, I'm Dr. Vasanti. Good evening. Good evening to all.
Good evening, Vasanthi madam.
Yes, sir. Very nice, sir. Very elaborate. 400 years of, I mean, not only 400 years, before that, the whole story of Cholas you have given in a nutshell, sir. Very interesting, very nice, very elaborate, as well as very informative also. So, thank you very much for this wonderful lecture, sir. Thanks to the organizers for this kind of arranging this kind of lectures, sir. It's very nice, you sir. Thank you very much. I feel it's very nice. I think we can have it in a book publication also. It will be very interesting and
Sure, we'll do it.
thank you, sir.
Thank you, Vasanthi madam. This is
Thank
a credit coming from you,
Yeah,
the archaeology department head of Tamil Nadu, and one of my teachers.
yeah.
And
Thank you.
I studied under you on archaeology and other things, learned a lot.
Thank
But
you, sir.
really, thanks for the compliment.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Kind of.
Poonam madam, you want to
Anybody
ask?
else?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Because my laptop went, I don't know what happened, so I'm again back to my phone. Thank you, sir. I really cannot believe you are from another field. You should have become a historian because it was really very interesting. Such a long lecture, but it was so presentation, but it was so interesting the way you presented. And I don't have a question, but I want to say something is earlier days during the time in the Asian period, in the medieval period, till say 12th, 13th, 17th century also, there used to be a lot of matrimony, even till 19th century, I suppose, because matrimonial alliance was very much common. Like when the king was powerful, they wanted to marry off their daughter to that king, or it was not only in India or Nepal or elsewhere, it was globally like that. Even in England, they were marrying from Ireland. And so this is very interesting. Maybe to some of them, like in Nepal, one of our princes got married to Tibetan prince Songchom Gampo. And then there were so many tales like this. like Lichivi Princess Kumari Devi married
If we
Chandragupta,
talk about marital
Samudragupta.
alliances,
Yeah,
marital
and
alliances into
yeah,
Southeast
and you
Asia,
also
itself
talked
is a
about
huge subject.
matrimonial alliance. So even the Cholas and the Chalukyas and all these kings and all, uh, you said they were also having matrimonial
See,
system also.
my only concern was if they have married with the Pandyas, they could have avoided a lot of trouble, and then the Cholas would have
Yes,
existed
yes,
for a far
yes.
more longer period, right?
Ah,
That's
yeah,
something
that is what
which
I
is
did not
very, very evident.
understand, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah, otherwise the war could have been avoided, I guess. Thank you,
Thank you.
sir. It was very interesting.
Thank you. Any questions?
Anything from Indrajit Bhattacharya, sir? Do you want any questions? Rajshekhar, sir, also wants to have questions. Indrajit?
No, sir. Actually, I must congratulate and thank Mr. Sivasankar Babu for such a wonderful lecture. It was an excellent coverage of about the history of Cholas and the rival dynasties and the war strategies and the formation of army. And it was all beautifully covered, means with maps and with figures and everything, and with inscriptional proofs and all that, trade and commerce. It was excellent presentation. So thank you for so much elaborate presentation, Shivshankar sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Mostly historians talk about war from the personal perspective, but there is always a commerce perspective.
Yes.
Not many people highlight that.
Yes, sir.
Raj, sir,
Yeah.
your question, sir?
Mr. Babu, it was an excellent presentation. It was beautiful. My question, what I surmise, I just want to reconfirm what I understood, and can we carry that that understanding further? And therefore, can we conclude that the military naval expeditions of Cholas in South Asia were not for territorial gains or expansion of or colonization of South Asian countries? This
No.
is what impression I get. So can we deduce by it that Indian cultural influence in Southeast Asia expanded not through military territorial conquest, but only through expansion of merchant and trade and diplomatic and cultural activities? Therefore, can we
Yes.
conclude that Cholas were not seen as colonizers in South Asia as the later European colonizers were viewed? Can we draw these conclusions? That's my question.
You are perfectly correct, sir. Primarily, Cholas need not rule the country. See, ultimately, after ruling the country, what do you want? Revenue. That is already pouring through merchants. What they were doing is have a nice tie-up with the merchants. They will give all the feedback. And then whenever merchants say that help me, they go there and then support and come back. That's it. So even the expedition from Nagapattinam, they say that it didn't go with a big fall. There is a beautiful book by Sandilyan, a fiction writer in Tamil Nadu, who has put a flavor around this expedition and written a popular novel called Kadalpura. There also he talks about the same story, and then where they start with a minimal force, slowly keep on adding more and more ships, and by the time they go to Srivijaya capital, they have a huge, all the merchant location they have people, they have control, they have warriors, they take some merchant army guys, and then by the time they enter the final round, climax, they have a huge one. It is like a IPL match, slowly they begin all the players, and then everybody gels at the finals, kind of a thing. So after hitting, they don't stay, they come back. They finish the negotiation, they come back, ensuring that this is done. But the effect was very clear. Next 4 years, there is no tie-up or invoice to China. That is what they achieved.
Okay. So they never actually went to administer those areas. They only ensured their merchants were
Yes.
given a fair deal.
Yeah.
They were not, their activities were not obstructed.
Correct. The same is true for Kalinga also. Kalinga also, they had several wars. They never wanted to rule Kalinga, except the Vengi. They stopped at Vengi and they never wanted to rule beyond that. They wanted to ensure that their merchants are not touched anywhere they go. That is a clear message.
So this is a contrast that is presented from the Muslim invasions and the European invasions and the Roman invasions in alien foreign territories, where they went and they established themselves. India did not do, these Cholas did not do that. So thank you very much for confirming that. I can, with confidence now in various forums, I can assert this conclusion. Thank you.
And Geeta, madam, your question?
I don't have a question. I would like to profusely thank Mr. Babu for his riveting talk that held our attention throughout. In fact, for 20 minutes, I had to attend another webinar, but I came fast to this because this seemed to be more interesting than the earlier one. So we came to know about many little known and unknown facts were brought to light for a better appreciation of the Chola's might. We knew that they were great maritime kings, but the strategies used and implemented was fascinating to have their rule not only in India, but also overseas. And this they did with the power of, with the mercantile power. And that is more powerful than military rule. It was a very fascinating and enlightening, insightful talk, Mr. Babu. As always, I enjoy your talks and good job in it. And thank you, Group Captain Rajshekhar Mehta, for arranging these year-long webinars. And each of these webinars have been very interesting. And thank you, Dr. Piyush, for giving us this opportunity and starting these sessions. Thank you so much.
Arya
Thank you, Geeta, madam. It was really great of you to come support and then push me into this group. And thank you for that.
My pleasure. You're all deserving, whom I suggest they are all capable historians or speakers. Well done, Mr. Babu, as always.
Thank you.
Good evening, sir. This is Arya from Calcutta. Sir, you spoke about little bit about the invasion to the Pala dynasty. If I'm not wrong, that time Mahindra Pala I was the ruling king at that point of time. So, sir, if you can talk a little bit about where this battle happened and how it happened, and how long they actually Chola ruled this particular part of India.
See, Mahibala period, the invasion happened. It didn't go through the swamp route, okay? And the 24 Parganas, it didn't go through that route. So they were taking a slightly deviant route and they crossed Ganges somewhere ahead of Calcutta, somewhere way ahead of Calcutta, and then crossed and then traveled over land and then came into the Bengal side. So at the time, the details are not very clear, and I also need to connect with some of the Bengali inscription writers to correlate the views from the other side. There is some acknowledgement that the invasion happened, and then the tributes and other things was paid. That there is acknowledgement. There is no conflict about that. But how it happened, the exact details, we are not having that much clarity sitting from Tamil Nadu. We may need to spend some more time on the Bengali related inscriptions also.
And did the Cholas stayed in this part, Bengal part, or they left?
Their stay in Bengal was very brief, and then they come back.
Sir, one thing, sir, as it said, it's correct, sir. We are getting only the make it is. In the villages of the Cholas only we are getting things. In your side, sir, you can find out, is there any records are there in Bengal side, and we can let you know to us, sir, because we are not having anything. It's a short term only. He invaded Then they came back only. They got, that's what we are getting from our side, the inscriptions. We didn't get more than that. As Babu sir said, it's true. Yeah. So let
But there
us,
is an but there is an interesting biological trace
yeah.
which was mentioned earlier by Orissa Balu, who was doing some research on this.
Yeah.
Whenever Chola army though, they like sambar, okay, and some amount of. So Imli, the tamarind is a staple diet in Tamil Nadu. So wherever they go, they use a lot of imli, the imli with seeds. Okay. So when they are cooking, when they are staying in a military station and then cooking, in the way to Orissa and in Bengal, in that areas, we still find lot of tamarind groves, which is not a native plant at that area. So somebody was researching on this tamarind groves along this one and saying that this might be one of the potential roots of Cholas. So the seeds and other things, they formed when an army stays there for 40 days, 20 days in a place, and then they do a lot of cooking. All the seeds of tamarind trees are wasted and thrown away. So that grows into trees, and then there are, in many places, there are pockets of tamarind tree grows in Bengal and in northern Odisha. There is an interesting point.
Wow. Great.
Rishi sir, you have a question?
Yes, good afternoon. Good evening, sir. Couple of questions. One is that you see they conquered up to Tungabhadra, so they went up to Karnataka. Then they went into what is current day coastal Andhra, Orissa, and coastal Bengal, West Bengal today. So they looks like they stayed just within southern peninsular India and were a maritime power. They did not venture further north into, let's say, current day Telangana or North Bidar and that North Karnataka or Maharashtra. They didn't, or from Orissa, they did not venture into present day Jharkhand or Bihar. That seems to be their geographic scope. That is the first question. Secondly, when you say there is no law of succession, I mean, would they not have any concept of agnatic primogeniture, which is normally the rule in royal families? Have that the king and his eldest son, what is called primogeniture. So there's no conflict between the brothers. That if the king dies, it goes straight to his eldest son, not to his brothers or younger sons or anybody. Did they not have any such clear law of succession?
Yeah, your mic is off.
No, sir, my mic is on. Now, can you hear me, Professor Badvia, sir? Am I audible?
Yes.
So
Yes,
my question is, did they not have any concept of primogeniture for succession, agnatic primogeniture? So there would be, or were they not having that and keep having succession wars? Like a king died, his brothers are fighting, his sons are fighting, his brother's sons are coming into the fray. So when you say there was no law of succession, how do you explain that?
Actually, this is an accepted practice rather than a law. If you see this, when during earlier Cholas, some of the kings died without having a strong hair, or the hair is only a young child, like your Uttama Chola, where the ruling goes to this one. But the king decides who is going to be my next heir. For example, Rajendra gave it to his first son. But again, after the first son, instead of going to the second, first son's son, it goes into the second son and third son, brother's rule. And then it goes into brother's son. So it is more of a worthy successor identified by giving him job in the previous 5 or 10 years, identifying who is a good son, and then giving him the crown prince status. For example, when we have Kulotunga, he had 5 or 6 sons who were employed all over the place. Finally, he decides one and who becomes a king. Vikramachola gives 2, 3 guys, and then he decides who is going to be the successor. So again, there is some amount of the first son getting it, but unfortunately, if the first son is not good or something, they don't hesitate to bypass.
Sir, but would this not have-
Fortunately, the culture has been so decent, and then they have been good upbringing, coordination, so that there has not been much of a civil war between brothers for the throne, like how is happened during the Mughalai period in Aurangzeb, Shah Jahan, and others. It was a very interesting pointed question. Thank you for that.
Srishti, you want to ask a question? Srishti,
Yes, sir. So, good evening, sir. So,
Good
my
evening.
question is that, like in Mewad, the ruler is Ekling, which is a form of Shiva, Lord Shiva. And in Vijayanagra also, we find that Virupaksha is taken as deity. So, in Cholas, was there any system of any deity being considered as the ruler, or the ruler himself, like the lineage which you described, so they were the rulers themselves?
Mostly the rulers will decide based on his experience. See, the way is the way normally they do is they put all their sons and others as viceroys and others in various areas to manage the war and other things. So the unworthy sons naturally die in war, so they are eliminated, like some of the things, and the worthy sons survive, become stronger, and then they are given some ruling of areas. In fact, during Kulotanga period, Vikrama Chola was ruling for some time in Odisha. Then he said, "You're not doing a good job. You come here." And then he shifted over to Sri Lanka, and then he became crown prince. Like that, there has been shifting of portfolios also. So that is more at the behest of the king, or in rare cases by popular acceptance, where Kulothunga, a distant one, came in and then he was accepted because he is a blood relationship from the maternal side for 3 generations.
our president, C. Sandeep Kumar sir, wants to ask a question. President of IIRF. Sir, are you here? His question is about the reasons of the downfall of the Chola kingdom. He has raised a question on the chat box. What were the main reasons for downfall of Chola kingdom?
See, any kingdom stands for 200 years. Okay. Beyond a point, 1 or 2 become drunkards or lazy guys, and then slowly the system fails. Okay. This is how many of the dynasties go into disuse. But when you have constant review, constant thing, they were able to survive. But beyond a point, after Kulothunga, the major debate is his release of the excise duty, where he gave more freedom to the merchant and other things. And then this also enabled the feudatories to take more freedom, which were under control. So by the second time of Kulothunga 2 and others, or Kulothunga 3, the feudatories were grouping among themselves, and then they are deciding this is how the king should behave. Whom they never dared to come in front of the king, they are demanding. That kind of comedy started happening. And then it went into such a phenomenon that one of the feudatory imprisoned Rajaraja III, his king, in one of these places. And finally, his father-in-law, the Hoysala king, had to intervene, come with the army to release him. Such was the plight. So, over a period, what I highlighted as the key controls, like your feudatory circle and vassal circle, that started once your central control goes weak. Slowly, the outerlying regions start making independence, and then they come out of this. That is what leads to disintegration. Still, this usually happens in any serious dynasties. But since here there is some amount of structure and other things, the decay was extended up to 400 years. That is a difference. Usually, any popular dynasties last 200 years max. Beyond that, it is very difficult. That is why the Chola's case is unique, because they did decay, but decayed in a slow manner with the structure, and then they extended up to 400.
Thank you.
The Pandyas had a longer tenure, but they were only for a short period. They were in peak in control, but all the time they were here or there existing and doing something or other. But nothing like Cholas, where they had absolute control of a major landmass and major control of the commerce. They were controlling the South India's commerce.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Now I have one or two questions. Sir, you spoke about the import of horses in the Chola kingdom. You mentioned the Arabian horses and also Bengal horses. So we all know about the good quality Arabian horses, Turkish horses, Central Asian horses, but what about these Bengal horses? Any breed or any specific you want to have?
I am not very deep into it. We may need to research and but there are mentioned that these are the two major sources. But Arabian horses, Tamil Nadu have been importing from 2nd, 3rd century BC. And it was mentioned in Devaram, Tiruvasagam, the hymns also, where Manika Vasaka, one of the famous core Shaiva disciples, he was a minister in Pandya, and he was given money to buy Arabian horses from the Pandya port. Instead, he spends the money in building a temple.
Right, sir.
So that is, the story is there, and there is an interesting side story, again a biological story. In Arabia and South Africa, there is a large tree called baobab. Huge tree. It requires 3 or 4 people to cover it. It is called baobab tree. Okay, so it lives for 1,000 years. That tree is available in Rameswaram and in Kakinada and in Orissa near Puri. All are earlier trading ports, and in Sri Lanka near Kandy. In Kandy, there is near the tooth temple, Buddha tooth temple, there is a huge baobab tree. All are horse trading ports for Arabia. So this baobab tree is used as this fruit is used for horses. So the seeds have left behind, and still in Rameswaram you can see many baobab trees. They lived through 1,000 years.
Okay, sir. Sir, is there any comparison with contemporary North Indian forces? Since Cholas had 60,000 elephants, so many cavalry, chariots. So, have you ever compared with any other such power in North India contemporary times?
Chalukyas. Who else?
Chalukyas. Okay, sir.
See, we need to thank Chalukyas also, because they protected the Narmada, so that the Cholas need to handle only with this kind of forces. So they never had to deal with any of the foreign forces, where the first Chalukyas, Pulikesi, they had a tie-up with this one. And after that, all the invasions stopped with Chalukyas.
So they were
clear them and come. So that is why in Tamil Nadu, most of the temples are still intact. Most of the Chola temples are still intact. We need to say thanks to Chalukyas, because they were acting as a buffer so that most of the North Indian invasions are stopped. Only invasions coming from the Telangana and the Kalinga route, Cholas were managing.
So the role played by the Chauhan dynasty in North India, say the safeguarding the border, when Prithviraj Chauhan, the same role played by the Chalukyas safeguarding the Pandyas and the Cholas and other southern areas, right, sir? So, but when Pandyas were able to finally quash the Cholas in 1279, that meant they, they also had a big army, big military format. But when the Alauddin Khilji attacked the South India, one by one he defeated Hoysalas and then Pandyas also. So, how
Right.
do you take this?
It was a spark for 100 years or 50 years. From Maravarma Sundara Pandya and then Jadavarma Sundara Pandya, and then the last known king was Kulasegara. Okay, Kulasegara period, the Malika for attack happened after Kulasegara. Just after Kulasegara, the sons fight, and one of the sons alliance with Malikapur, and then the invasion to Madurai was pulled in. After that, the Madurai Pandyas were they disintegrate and then they live in different parts. Some in Tenkasi, Kuttalam, some in Tuticorin, Tirunelveli, they're fragmented. So their power is for a very brief period. That's all. They were never consistently ruled for a longer period to build a steady army, a permanent army, and garrison.
Sir, thank you very much. And now,
If you see to a certain extent, if a strong king, a similar profile, which could have done it, are the Eastern Kankas. They also have a lineage from 5th, 6th century, and then they peaked around 100, 200 years later than this. They peaked around, they started with our Anantavarma Chodakanga, and then that is like Rajaraja to us. And after that, they peaked with the Konark's builder, your Narsingadeva. Narsingadeva set it in such a way, powerful way, that for the next 250, 300 years, there was no invasion from Bengal, Muslim sultanates into Odisha. Till Kalapa had started the invasion, there was no invasion. He put it in such a strong position, the Kalingan dynasty. Again, there is another passion area for me.
Right, sir. Right, sir. Now, moving towards the conclusion, we have the session chair, Dr. S. Vasanti. She worked as deputy superintending archaeologist, and she has participated in various excavations in Tamil Nadu, author of many books, editor of many books, and also wrote a paper on the Chola naval expeditions to Southeast Asia. So I will request Dr. S. Vasanti for the concluding remarks as chairperson.
Yeah, thank you very much for this opportunity. I feel it's elaborate as well as I said before. Actually, it is very nice. Good evening, very informative and very nice. As Babu said, the buffer state, because the Chalukyas protected the southern part of even Chalukyas, Hoysalas, all the Karnataka people. We can say that Karnataka they stopped these invasions and other things. It's very informative. Thanks for the organizers, Dr. Pius and the others. And also, I want to tell you, it's very information. You have given some information, sir, Pius, sir. You said we can have a comparative study of the Chola's army as well as the other part of like the same contemporary also, the Chalukyas, the Hoysalas, and we can have some comparative study also. It's very nice through inscriptions, through other records also. It's very nice because lot of informations are there. I think it's open to the young generation. They can have a study and they can have they can bring out the potentialities of the things and other things. So we feel so happy, sir. It's a very informative. So next time we are awaiting for another this kind of talk from the conference organizers. Thank you very much, Babu sir. It's an excellent presentation. Thank you very much. You have given a lot of, actually, I felt very happy because it's a long period you have covered with the beautiful presentations, all the maps and other things, no? So it's very nice, sir. Thank you very much. Kind of.
Thank you.
Our President Sandeep Kumar sir, do you want to say something?
Thank you very much. It was very interesting and very educative talk by Mr. Babu. And
Thank you.
this sort of history is not known to children. So I was just typing that thing. I'm not aware. I never studied. I studied it in Kerala. Just nothing was known. You know, these kingdoms were also there. Not even Marthan Varma was taught in the history. These sort of things need to be taught to the children. And in brief, who is Chola, who are Cholas, who are Chalukyas, who are Pandyas, and things like that. There is a need to teach these issues, this history of our own history, and how they ensured that Southeast Asia was under control for trade. And like Rajshekhar Mehta has said, it is only for ensuring that our trade is saved. They had the military intervention to those places. So that itself is a great thing our children or our progeny should know, so that our people understand how our ancestors ruled the country or ruled parts of the country, and there are a lot of learnings in that. So that's all I have to say. And thanks again, and we will look forward to your further contribution in this continued webinar series. And I'm sure we will also get educated, and the book will come out very nicely with all these aspects.
It is mutual.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brigadier Sandeep Kumar sir.
And
Now, shall we call off the meeting?